21:17 at night. Inside what is described as one of the most luxurious mansions in Lagos. Chandeliers shimmer like falling stars. A line of supercars stretches endlessly beyond the gates, and amid the low hum of whispered conversations, a revelation spreads like wildfire. At the age of 83, Olu Jacobs, a man who has lived through decades of fame, loss, and quiet resilience, is preparing for what many are calling a $1,000,000 wedding, with the one woman he chose long ago, Silva. Cameras flash, guests turn, and in that moment the world seems to pause. Because this is not just a celebration. It is, according to some sources, the culmination of a love story that has survived storms few truly understand. As the night unfolds, the timeline of their journey begins to echo through the halls. From the early days when their paths first crossed in an industry filled with ambition and silent rivalries, to the years when success brought them closer to the spotlight, but also, allegedly, closer to pressures that could have broken them apart. There are whispers among the guests. Some recall moments when distance seemed to grow between them, when rumors of betrayal or emotional exhaustion quietly circulated. Others speak of nights when, according to those close to them, silence filled their home more loudly than words ever could. Yet through every fracture, every unspoken pain, something endured, something refused to collapse. And now, decades later, that same fragile yet unyielding bond is being displayed in a spectacle so grand it almost feels unreal. Inside the ballroom, the details intensify the tension. A wedding gown said to be handcrafted over months. A suit tailored with meticulous precision. A stage designed to resemble not just a celebration, but a statement. Guests from across the entertainment world arrive, their expressions a mix of admiration and disbelief. Some are seen wiping away tears, perhaps thinking of the years gone by. Others exchange glances as if questioning why now, why at this age, why after everything. According to insiders, this moment was not planned overnight. It was, they say, the result of long conversations, of reflections on mortality, on time lost, on memories that could never be rewritten. There is a sense that this wedding is not only about love, but about reclaiming something that once felt on the edge of being lost forever. As the ceremony begins, the atmosphere shifts, the music softens, footsteps slow, and all eyes turn toward Olu Jacobs. His presence carries both strength and fragility, each step measured, each breath deliberate. And when Silva appears, there is a visible tremor in the room, because her gaze, steady yet emotional, seems to carry the weight of every year they have shared, every sacrifice, every doubt, every quiet victory. For a brief moment, the noise fades, and what remains is something deeply human, a connection that feels both triumphant and painfully honest. Yet even in this peak of emotion, tension lingers beneath the surface. Some guests, according to what is being said, cannot help but wonder if this grand gesture is also a farewell of sorts, a way to hold on to something before time inevitably takes its course. The vows, though not fully heard, are described as deeply personal, filled with pauses, with glances that say more than words ever could. And as the celebration continues into the night, the rhythm begins to slow. Laughter becomes softer, conversations more reflective. The grandeur of the event gives way to something quieter, almost introspective. In a corner of the mansion, an old photograph is said to rest on a table, slightly tilted, capturing a younger version of the couple, smiling without knowing what lay ahead. A gentle breeze moves through the curtains. The lights dim gradually, And while the world outside continues to buzz with reactions, speculation, and endless commentary, inside that vast, now quieter space, Olu Jacobs and Silva stand side by side, not speaking, just looking into the distance, as if searching for something beyond the celebration, something beyond the applause. And in that lingering silence, there is a feeling that this story, no matter how grand its moment tonight, is still carrying shadows no one can fully see as the final lights flicker, leaving only reflections on polished floors and the faint echo of music fading into the night. 3 o'clock. As the echoes of the lavish celebration begin to settle into the background, the story quietly shifts backward in time. Because what the world is witnessing tonight did not begin under crystal lights or among luxury cars. It is said to have started decades ago, in a very different Lagos, where ambition was louder than comfort, and dreams often came at the cost of certainty. Olu Jacobs, already carrying the aura of authority even in his early years, moved through the industry with a presence that commanded attention. While Silva, sharp-minded and deeply expressive, carved her own path with a determination that, according to some, made her both admired and misunderstood. When their paths first crossed, it was not a moment of instant romance. There were, as many insiders suggest, layers of hesitation, differences in timing, perhaps even unspoken fears of what love might demand from two people so deeply tied to their craft. And so, while the world now sees a union that feels inevitable, the truth beneath it appears far more complicated. There were stretches of time when their connection seemed uncertain, moments when distance, both emotional and physical, quietly grew between them. And according to whispers that have never been fully confirmed, there were periods when each of them questioned whether the relationship could survive the weight of their individual journeys. The spotlight, while glamorous on the surface, often hid a different reality. Long nights on set, missed calls, conversations cut short by exhaustion, and an underlying loneliness that neither fame nor success could truly erase. Some who claim to have been close to them during those years speak of silences that lingered longer than arguments, of looks exchanged across rooms that carried more questions than answers. There are even suggestions that at one point they stood dangerously close to walking away from each other entirely. Not because the love was gone, but perhaps because it had become too heavy to carry without breaking. And yet, it is precisely within those fractures that something unexpected seemed to take root. Pain, instead of pushing them apart completely, began to bind them in a way that no perfect story ever could. Each misunderstanding, each moment of doubt became, in a strange and quiet way, a thread that pulled them back toward one another. Stronger, but also more fragile. As if they both understood that what they had was not easily replaceable, and not easily repaired either. Over time, their journey unfolded not as a straight path, but as a series of returns, leaving, drifting, and then finding their way back again, while the public saw performances, awards, and red carpet appearances. Behind the scenes there were, according to those who observed closely, quieter battles, internal conflicts, questions about sacrifice, about identity, about whether love could truly coexist with lives so deeply consumed by art and expectation, and still, through all of it, neither of them fully let go. Which is why, standing here now in the present, under the weight of years and memories that cannot be undone, this wedding feels less like a beginning, and more like the resurfacing of something that refused to disappear. Something shaped not only by passion, but by endurance, by wounds that never fully healed, and by a connection that, for reasons no one can completely explain, kept choosing to survive. 8 o'clock. The rhythm slows, and the brightness of the stage fades into something far more fragile. Because behind the applause, behind the awards, behind the image, the world thought it understood. There were years that, according to many close to them, existed in near silence. Years where the story of Olu Jacobs and Silva was no longer told through headlines, but through quiet moments hidden away from the public eye. Time moved differently then, not marked by premieres or celebrations, but by long nights, unanswered questions, and a growing sense that something was changing in ways no one could fully control. There were whispers, never officially confirmed, about health concerns, about invisible pressures that come not from fame, but from the passage of time itself. And according to those who claim to have witnessed fragments of that period, there were days when Olu Jacobs seemed to withdraw, not dramatically, not in a way that drew attention, but gradually, almost imperceptibly, as if the world he once dominated with such presence was slowly becoming distant, unfamiliar. And in that quiet retreat, Silva, it is said, remained, not as a celebrated actress, not as a public figure, but as a woman facing the possibility of losing the person she had spent a lifetime holding on to. The details that surface from those years are small, almost insignificant at first glance, yet they carry a weight that is impossible to ignore. A hand held a little tighter than before, a glance that lingers longer than it should, a room dimly lit, where conversations are replaced by silence, and silence, in turn, speaks louder than anything else. Some describe nights when she would sit beside him, saying nothing, just being there, as if presence alone was the only thing left to offer. Others mention moments when, according to quiet observations, recognition itself seemed fragile, like something that could slip away without warning. And still, she stayed, not out of obligation, not out of fear, but perhaps because the bond between them had already moved beyond explanation, beyond reason, into something deeper, something that could not simply be walked away from. There is a sense, in the way these moments are recalled, that time during those years felt suspended, as if every day carried both hope and dread. Hope that things might return to how they once were, and dread that they never would. And yet, even in that uncertainty, there were glimpses of connection that refused to disappear. A faint smile, a brief moment of clarity, a shared look that, for just a second, erased all the confusion and brought them back to who they used to be. But those moments, as described by some, were fleeting, and often followed by longer stretches of quiet, heavier, more difficult to endure. It is in these unseen years that the weight of their story truly settles, not in the glamour, not in the recognition, but in the endurance of something that continues even when it becomes painful, even when it demands more than it gives back. And now, as the present celebration unfolds with all its brilliance and spectacle, there is an underlying awareness that what is being celebrated tonight is not just a love story, but a survival, a journey through shadows that very few have truly witnessed. A series of moments that existed far away from cameras, where strength was measured not in grand gestures, but in the quiet decision to remain, again and again, even when everything else seemed to be slipping into silence. 1300, and then, almost without warning, everything changes. Because according to reports that begin to circulate with unusual speed, a decision is made, not quietly, not privately, but in a way that sends ripples through an entire industry. A wedding. At the age of 83. Not as the beginning of a love story, but as a declaration of something that, many believe, has already endured a lifetime. Invitations, it is said, start to arrive in the hands of carefully selected guests. Sealed, elegant, almost symbolic. And as names begin to surface, the scale of what is being planned becomes impossible to ignore. Powerful figures in the entertainment world, legendary actors, influential voices, individuals whose presence alone can define an event are all reportedly expected to attend, and within hours, social media begins to erupt, speculation grows, headlines multiply, and a single phrase appears again and again: the wedding of the century. Some celebrate it as a rare and beautiful affirmation of love that refuses to fade. Others, however, question the timing, the meaning, the deeper reason behind such a grand gesture at this stage of life. Because beneath the surface of excitement, there is an undercurrent of uncertainty that no amount of luxury can fully conceal. According to those close to the situation, this decision did not come easily. It was not a spontaneous act, but something shaped by reflection, by conversations that may have stretched late into the night, by an awareness that time, once taken for granted, is no longer infinite. There is a sense that this wedding is not about proving anything to the world, but perhaps about holding on to something before it slips away. And yet, even as preparations intensify, the tension does not disappear. It grows, quietly, steadily. Guests who receive their invitations are said to react in different ways. Some are deeply moved, seeing it as a testament to resilience, while others exchange cautious glances, as if unsure how to interpret what this moment truly represents. Is it a celebration, or a farewell disguised as one? The mansion is transformed, every detail meticulously arranged. Lights, music, decor that speaks of grandeur and finality at the same time, and still, behind all of it, questions remain, unanswered, persistent. Because while the world prepares to witness a spectacle unlike any other, there are those who cannot help but wonder what lies beneath the surface, what emotions remain unspoken, what fears linger in the quiet spaces between the preparations. And as the date draws closer, the anticipation becomes almost unbearable, not just for what will happen, but for what it might mean, as if everyone, in their own way, is waiting not only for a wedding, but for a truth that has yet to reveal itself. 1800. And when the night finally arrives, it unfolds like something suspended between reality and illusion. Music rises softly at first, then swells into something almost overwhelming. The red carpet glows under a sea of flashing lights. Footsteps echo with deliberate slowness, each movement measured, as if time itself has decided to move more carefully. Guests take their places, voices lower into hushed tones, and then Silva appears, in a gown said to have been crafted exclusively for this moment. Every detail reflecting not just elegance, but history. A life lived in fragments of joy and endurance. Her presence shifts the atmosphere instantly, and across the room, Olu Jacobs stands, illuminated by layers of golden light, not just as a man, but as a symbol of time, of everything that has been, and everything that may never return. When their eyes meet, the room seems to fall into a fragile stillness, because there are no grand gestures, no dramatic declarations, only a gaze. that carries decades of memory, of battles fought in silence, of love that survived in ways no one fully witnessed. Applause breaks out, rising like a wave, yet beneath the celebration, something quieter exists, something that cannot be masked by music or luxury. There are guests, according to those observing closely, who do not clap immediately, who remain still, watching, as if trying to understand what this moment truly represents. Some eyes glisten with emotion. Others remain distant, reflective, as though they are not just witnessing a wedding, but standing at the edge of something far more fragile, something that feels as if it could dissolve at any second. The ceremony continues, vows exchanged in voices that are steady, yet heavy with everything left unsaid. Hands meet, fingers intertwine, and for a brief moment, it feels like time has been rewritten, but only for a moment, because even within the beauty of it all, there is an undeniable awareness of its impermanence. Laughter returns, glasses are raised, music grows louder again, yet in the spaces between those sounds, there are pauses, lingering glances, unspoken thoughts that pass silently from one guest to another, as if everyone senses that this night, no matter how radiant, exists on the edge of something they cannot name. And as the celebration reaches its peak, with lights brighter than ever, and the world outside watching every second, Olu Jacobs and Silva remain at the center, not moving much, not saying much, just standing there, holding on to each other, as though the act itself is more important than the spectacle surrounding them, as though beneath the brilliance of the night, there is a quiet urgency, a need to preserve something before it fades. And in that contrast, between the overwhelming glow of celebration and the subtle weight carried in their stillness, the night begins to feel less like a dream, and more like a fleeting moment caught between what once was and what may soon be gone. 2200. And slowly, almost imperceptibly, the night begins to loosen its grip. The music fades into distant echoes. Footsteps that once filled the halls grow fewer, softer, until they disappear entirely. One by one, the guests leave, their voices trailing off into the darkness outside. The laughter that once defined the evening dissolves into memory, and the brilliance of the celebration starts to dim. Chandeliers lose their intensity. Lights are turned down. Shadows stretch longer across the polished floors until the mansion, once alive with spectacle, becomes something else entirely. Something quiet, almost unfamiliar, in one of the rooms. The wedding gown now hangs motionless, its delicate fabric, still carrying the weight of a moment that has already passed. The vast space around it feels emptier than before, as if the grandeur itself has retreated, leaving behind only silence. And in that silence, Olu Jacobs and Silva remain, standing side by side, no longer surrounded by applause, no longer framed by flashing cameras, just two figures in a room that suddenly feels too large, too still. There are no words between them, none that seem necessary, none that could fully capture what the night has meant, or what it may have taken. Outside, a faint breeze moves through the open window, brushing against the curtains, causing them to sway gently, the soft movement echoing through the stillness like a quiet reminder that time continues. Regardless of what has just unfolded, on a nearby table, an old photograph rests, slightly worn, its edges softened by years. According to those who have seen it, it is said to capture them in the earliest days, before the fame, before the distance. before the long stretches of silence that would later define so much of their journey. And as the breeze passes through, the frame tilts, just enough to catch the light differently, as if something unseen has reached out and touched it. And for a brief moment, it feels like the past and the present are overlapping, fragile, unstable, as though one could slip into the other without warning. The stillness deepens, not empty, but heavy, filled with everything that remains unspoken, everything that cannot be undone. And somewhere within that quiet, a question begins to form, not loudly, not clearly, but persistently, lingering in the space between them, between the fading light and the encroaching darkness. Was this night a beginning, or something else entirely? Something that shines only once, brilliantly, before slowly dissolving into memory, as the last light flickers against the walls, and the room settles into a silence that feels almost infinite. There is a sense, faint but undeniable, that what has just happened may never be repeated, and that beyond this moment, beyond the echoes of celebration and the traces of what once was, something is already slipping away, quietly, gently, into a darkness that no one can fully follow.